Chapter 8. All through the spring, while the heat swelled and the river shrank, Ranofer and Haket met as often as they were able, at midday or in the evening after their day's work was done. Frequently the ancient joined them, bringing Nelumbo nuts in his cackling laugh and his sly, wise teasing. One morning, after a great many delays, Haket was finally instructed in beading at the Gold House. That evening he told Ranofer all about it. It is easy. You could do it any time you liked, if only you had the tools. Now, do you remember that charcoal block with the tiny round depressions in it? Rek always keeps it next to the big furnace on that storage shelf. Aye, I remember it. Well, you simply melt scraps of metal in those little hollows. I used the sweep for it today. When the puddles turn the right color, then you take the block from the fire, and in a minute you turn the beads out. Then you boil them and pickle and wash them in water, and there they are, ready to be soldered to whatever you like. Rek is using them for a bracelet now. He is making one for a judge's lady. Aye, and there's another way to make them, too. You make little rings by winding the wire about a straight, thin rod and then clipping each twist. Aye, links. I learned long ago to make links. Very well, then, you make links, and you pick some of them on a layer of finely broken charcoal in a clay box. Then you cover those with another layer of charcoal bits. Then you put in more links. You keep it up until the box is full, and then you wire the lid on and heat it until the box and wire are redder than the fire. When you shake the charcoal out, by Amon, it is surprising. The links have all turned to little round grains. The first way sounds quicker. Aye, but the second is more fun, Haket grinned, said the rat as he walked straight past the cheese and robbed the trap. I will admit it's surer to use the charcoal block, where you can see the gold melt. I had to try twice before I got the box to the right shade of red. The first time I opened it, I still had links, and Seta cuffed me all over the shop. I've no doubt you could do it, though, if you had the chance to try. Some day I will, Ranofer said, but he looked at his gritty hands, rough from a day's sandstoning, adorned with one of the ever-present bandages, and wondered dismally if the day would ever come. He wondered more and more as the spring progressed, and nothing changed in his life except that Gaboo was sometimes in a good mood and sometimes in a bad. It was beginning to seem to him that he had only dreamed once of gold working, of learning from his father, of working about Rek's shop and making the little leaves, and that now he was awake once and for all to a world of dreary stone. Haket continued to describe every process he was taught at the Gold House, but the more interesting the processes, the more complicated they were, and the harder they were to describe. Besides, it was not long before Ranofer realized he could never increase his skill merely by listening to Haket's earnest explanations. It was practice he required, not just information. I cannot learn these things, he told Haket finally one day. Not this way. It is useless. Could you shape a bowl if someone merely told you how to do it? Nay, not until you held the hammer in your hand and learned the sound it must make and the way the stake must ring. Let us give up, Haket. It only makes me hate stone-cutting more than I already do. The ancient, who was sitting beside them, crackling Nelumbo nuts, glanced up at him. Why is it you hate stonework so, young one? It is a good trade. A good trade, Ranofer exclaimed scornfully. It is a clod's trade. It is a trade that spoils a man's hand and makes him a dullard and near breaks his back every day. And... He went on until he was out of breath, while the old man listened in silence, cracking his nuts and nodding patiently now and then. Aye, very well, the ancient said when Ranofer had finished at last. It is a clod's trade, and you hate it. But it is a trade, young one. A man can earn his living by it, and not too poor a living either. Now he paused carefully, removed the bitter leaf from the lobes of a nut with his knobby old hands, and handed the kernels to Haket. I never learned a trade at all. He lifted his one bright eye and looked directly at Ranofer. My father was a cattle drover in Lower Egypt, and I helped him. We wandered here and there, and when he died and went to the gods, may his 3,000 years be full of joy, another drover took his place, and I had to wander alone. I came here at last and worked on the docks while I was young enough and strong enough, but how I used to envy those who knew a craft, and went each day to a shop, and took home their coppers safe and sure each night, and went again in the morning, instead of having to wonder who would hire them today. Hi, remember, young one, you will be an old one too some day, though it is hard for you to think so now, and it is not good to be an old one without a trade. If it is stone cutting instead of gold working, that is a pity. But learn it well anyway, while you have the chance." "But you," Ranofer faltered, "I thought you have the donkey in the little house on the edge of the desert." "I do not complain," the ancient said, smiling, "but I have always had them. I know what I speak of, boy, and though you may think me a dismal old crow, you'll do well to heed my cawing." "No doubt he is right," Ranofer told himself as he walked back to the shop, but he had no heart for trying to become a good stone-cutter, or for taking notice of anything in the shop beyond what he was forced to learn. One day, a day of glaring, shimmering heat, when one's skin drew tight from the dryness and even seemed likely to crack into crazily spreading wounds as all the fields had cracked, Haket appeared at the thicket in the state of great excitement. "Ranofer," he panted, flinging himself down upon the matted rushes beside his friend, "tomorrow Rek is sending me to the workshop of Zal the master to fetch a stake. He did not say I must go alone. Do you want to go with me?" But I cannot," Ranofer was stammering with the force of his wanting to go. "I will be all day at the stone shop. I am to go at the day's end, after work is done." "Then I can, unless Pi delays me with some stupid task. He must not. I will stay out of his sight and slip away when the first man lays down his tool. How did that happen? What sort of stake are you to fetch?" "One of Za's own design, which he uses in some way for the golden masks he makes to fit over the faces of the great ones when they go to their tombs. The stake has cracked, and he is ordering a new one made. He has given Rek leave to take the old one and have it copied for his own work. He is generous as well as great. Rek is a kinsman of his brother's wife. You will meet me then, perhaps at the big tree by Abba the potter's. Then we will go on together. Zao's shop is near the palace." "I know. I'll be there. My thanks, friend." The next day dragged even more slowly than usual. With the prospect glittering at its end, Ranofer nicked his hand twice with a carelessly placed chisel, as visions of the wonderful objects he would see in Zao's shop danced through his mind. "I will speak to Zao again, really speak to him, face to face," he kept thinking. "He will ask me how I fare, and I will tell him everything, only little by little, as he asks. I must not pour it all out, like some imbecile, and make him think I ask for pity. Aman forbid it. I will answer his questions only, and be modest and proud like my father. But he will find it out. All about Gaboo and the gold stealing, and that I was taken from Rek and forced to work here among these cursed blocks of stone. And then he will frown and say that it is an evil thing, a slap in the faces of the gods, and the son of Thutra the goldsmith should be a stone-cutter's apprentice. Aye, and he will remember that he once saw my little cups and armbands, and that they showed skill, very unusual skill, and he will grow very stern at the thought of my hands being ruined and my days wasted, and he will go straight to Gaboo and tell him he must release me so that I can come home and be his pupil." Ranofer's thoughts slowed uneasily, then stopped. Daydreams had lost some of their old power. These days reality kept creeping in and ruining them with stony facts. He could not persuade himself, even in fancy, that Gaboo would care a copper what Zao thought or said. Nor could he see himself speaking of the thieving. Nor could he see any way to become Zao's pupil, however warm the possible invitation, without a place to live and a way to earn his fee. The donkey. Zao would not present him with a donkey any more than Gaboo would. Catching sight of Pi striding toward him with jaw outthrust and stick lifted, Ranofer bent hastily to his work. "No matter," he told himself. "I shall see Zao again, and speak a little with him, and see things he has made. Perhaps I may even go to watch him work a little. It is enough, is it not? Yesterday brought no such gift from the gods, nor will tomorrow." He was waiting at Abba the potter's late that afternoon when Haket came running down the dusty street. They started at once for Zao's house, talking excitedly as they threaded their way through the press of home-going Thebans. The parched and wounded earth was rosy with the sun's dying, and the Nile, shrunk to a red-brown trickle in its season of death, looked exactly like what Ranofer knew it was, the last feeble flowing of blood from the body of the beloved, murdered god Osiris. The nearer they drew to the palace, the thinner the crowds became, and when they turned away from the river into the street of the carpenters, they found the street almost deserted, with the shops closed for the night. "We must find a turning somewhere near here," Haket said. "Zal lives on the street of good fortune." "I know." "You have been there before? With your father, perhaps?" "Aye, but it was long ago. I remember little. I think it was very high walls, with a purple vine tumbling over them near the gate, and the tree-tops showing behind. Nay, I am not sure about the trees, but I know the design worked into the grill of the gate. It is a straining vat and cloth, the sign for gold. Haket turned large eyes upon him. Can you read, like a scribe? Nay, I learned a little when my father lived among men. Look here, is a turning. Aye, it is the right one. Rex said there would be a wine shop on one side and a tall palm opposite. Their footsteps quickened as they left the rows of carpenters' shops and entered the other street. It was almost another world. There were high walls on either side with the tops of palms and acacias showing above them. There was no dust, much quiet, and a pervading fragrance of flowers and wealth. Here lived Pharaoh's favorites among the artisans. Farther along, beyond their comparatively modest houses, the street broadened, and the grand villas of judges and officials rose on either side in the midst of large gardens and vineyards. At the extreme end of the street, like the dazzling tip on an arrow, the two boys could see a corner of the palace walls, stained pink by the sunset. Here it is, Haket exclaimed, pointing. High walls with a purple vine. But there are other purple vines, he added uncertainly. They walked to the gate and found the gold sign worked into its grill. It is the one, Ranofer whispered. Then we open the gate and go in. That is what Rex said. Diffidently, Ranofer raised the latch, opened the gate just wide enough for them both to squeeze through, and closed it carefully beyond them. Immediately all the past miserable months fell away from him, and he stood breathing the hot, well-remembered odor of molten gold and hearing the chiming of a little hammer. They had entered Zhao's shop, not his dwelling, which must be beyond the inner courtyard wall. Across the clay-paved court was a row of stalls roofed with palm fronds. In the largest, an old man knelt on a mat before a low workbench. Otherwise the shop was empty. As Zhao half turned, both boys bent their heads, each one hand on the opposite shoulder in the gesture of respect. Who comes? Said a deep, even voice. Straighten yourselves so that I may see something besides the tops of your heads. They obeyed hastily. Greeting, master of all goldsmiths, Haket said. I come from Rek. He has sent me to fetch the steak. I remember. Come here. Haket started across the court, and Ranofer followed him dreamily, past small basket-shaped furnaces in which the fires were dying, past the balance scales and the washing vats. He was conscious of the gleam of gold here and there, the round shapes of crucibles, the smoothness of the clay floor under his bare feet, so different from the grit and stone dust of his present life. The familiar and well-loved details receded into the background, however, as they approached the austere old man, leaning with one elbow on the workbench, a little copper hammer dangling from his long-fingered, supple-corded hand. Ranofer remembered the hand well, and the broad, strong-boned face, with its thinning eyebrows and full, carven mouth, but he had forgotten how austere Zhao's manner was, and how difficult it had always been in the old days to summon courage to utter a few words in his presence, even when his father was beside him, even when Zhao had asked some question of him first. I need not have worried that I would pour out my troubles like an imbecile, Ranofer thought. I cannot even open my mouth. What made me think that I would dare to speak to this great one? I, a nobody, a ragged stone-cutter's boy. He stood, tongue-tied, feeling his very existence in an intrusion, while Zhao directed Haket to the farthest stall and to the cupboard where he would find the steak. Then, when Haket had bowed and hurried along the row of stalls on his errand, Zhao glanced at Ranofer. For a moment that seemed as long as a day, his eyes rested indifferently on Ranofer's face. Zhao started to turn away, but hesitated. His scanty brows drew together in a puzzled expression. I know you, do I not? He said. Ranofer tried twice before he found his voice and discovered how to make it work. Aye, master, that is, you knew my father. Your father? It is the son of Thutra, my departed friend. May this 3,000 years be full of delight. May his 3,000 years be full of delight. If Amon wills, Ranofer murmured automatically. Aye, Thutra's boy, and your name is? Ranofer, master. Ranofer, I remember. How do you fare now, Ranofer? You are apprenticed at some gold house, I suppose. Nay, I am apprenticed to my half-brother Gabu the stone-cutter. Stone-cutter? Zhao's eyebrows lifted. That is strange. I thought I remembered that you were interested in the smith's art. But then, I forget in things nowadays. Indifferent again, he turned back to his work. But I am, Ranofer wanted to cry out. He could not make a sound, confronted by Zhao's back. Why did I say that? He thought furiously. It was all wrong. I should have explained first, then. He forgot even his self-recrimination as his eye fell on the object lying on Zhao's table. It was half finished, a wide gold collar formed of tiny chains strung with innumerable golden beads, each one delicately and imaginatively conceived, superbly wrought. Without knowing he edged forward until he stood at the man's shoulder, looking down at the wonder and the breathing hard. Zhao glanced up at him, followed his fascinated gaze. "An order from the palace," he remarked. 60 days hence, at the festival of the High Nile, Queen Tai will wear about her beautiful neck Pharaoh's newest gift. It will be complete by then, if I keep working." He picked up a tiny hammer and began to reshape a golden wing tip which seemed to the boy already perfect. Ranofer watched the long-fingered, agile hands and clasped his own behind him. They felt harsh with stone dust, rough and clumsy. "Oh, that I might learn to make such things," he whispered. The hammer paused, uplifted, as Zhao shot him a keen glance over his shoulder. Then he went back to his hammering. "You will never learn to make them at a stone-cutting shop." Ranofer gathered all his courage, resolved to right his mistake. "It is Gaboo's will, not mine, that I am apprenticed there, master. He took me from Rex's gold house, where I had been working. Not learning, only working," he told himself fiercely. "Get everything straight this time. He took me from Rex because he stopped, swallowing hard. He could not believe it. Safe to mention that the theft of gold and the name of the thief in the presence of any goldsmith, even Zhao, might think he had stolen it himself. "Because you lacked skill, perhaps," Zhao said. "Nay, master." "Or aptitude?" "Nay, or diligence? Gold working is not for the lazy." "Master, I would ask nothing better than to spend every moment of my life at it. It has nothing to do with me. I did not want to leave. I did not want to. But Gaboo—" Again Ranofer floundered and fell silent. Zhao put down his hammer and turned. Placing both long, strong hands on his knees, he scrutinized Ranofer. "There is something you do not tell me," he said finally. "Aye, master, there is something I dare not tell anyone, except the ancient," Ranofer thought, "but he does not count." Zhao considered this for a moment. "Then why do you tell me anything at all?" he inquired. Because one day before my father died, you looked at the little things I had made and said they showed skill. You said, perhaps when he is older." Zhao regarded him thoughtfully for a while, then picked up his hammer again. Over the ring of its tappings, he spoke composedly. "You wish to become my pupil." "I wish it. Who would not wish it? But I cannot pay the fee. Gaboo takes the coppers I earn at stone cutting, and I have nothing else." Cling, 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 went the little hammer. "I do not take apprentices, Ranofer," Zhao said. "I know." Ranofer's voice was almost inaudible. "I ask for nothing, master. I wish only to see you again, perhaps watch you work a little." Why, indeed, had he spoken of all this to Zhao, who could do nothing about it? No one could do anything about it. Ranofer felt a fool. He felt utterly miserable. "I remember looking at your work," Zhao said unexpectedly. "My old friend Thutra took me one morning to a cupboard and showed me a cup with a handle and 2 armbands. One of them was overambitious." He stopped work for an instant to level the hammer handle and a sharp glance over his shoulder at Ranofer. "You did not know enough to attempt that spiral pattern." His admonishing eye held Ranofer's a moment, then he resumed his work. The other armband was creditable, as was the cup. Aye, quite creditable. "Thank you, master." Ranofer was glowing with the praise, as joyful now as he had been miserable 2 minutes before. Zhao ceased his work on the wing tip, examined it intently, and seemed satisfied at last. He turned, with the collar still in his hand, and gave his full attention to Ranofer. "Thutra was my friend for 20 years, he said. "I would be faithless if I looked the other way when his son has fallen upon evil days. Still," Zhao's ragged eyebrows lifted arrogantly, "perhaps I would be faithless if the cup and the armband had been poor. I am interested in goldsmiths, not orphans." "Of course, master," Ranofer said humbly. "However, the cup and the armband were creditable, promising. I wish to help you, Ranofer. You may come to me as a pupil, and I will require no fee, but you must not speak of that to my other pupils." For one moment, Ranofer felt that he could soar straight into the air like any bird, but only for one moment. In the next, he plunged sickeningly to earth. "Master, I am not free to be your pupil," he whispered. "I am apprenticed to Gaboo." "Dissolve your apprenticeship." "I cannot." "You speak with a flapping tongue," the old man said calmly. "When the reasons are sound, it is a simple process of law to part from one's master. Any scribe can write the papers." Ranofer stood like a culprit, head hanging, face burning with humiliation. "Master, if I did that, Gaboo would kill me, or sell me. Besides, one must eat. I have nothing except what he gives me." After a moment, Zhao rose from his knees and carried the gold collar to a fire smoldering with a small hooded furnace. Coaxing a fresh blaze with a blowpipe, he found tongs and with them held a portion of the collar carefully to the blast, his corded brown old back gleaming with the heat. The subject appeared to be closed. Everything in Ranofer fought frantically against its closing, so frantically that his racing mind found a solution. "Master," he exclaimed. He found himself standing by Zhao's side without knowing he had moved. "Master, I work only in the day at the stone-cutting shop, and at night Gaboo is often gone from home, often and very late." Even in his eagerness, the old question flashed through Ranofer's mind. "Where does he go?" He moistened his lips hastily and went on. "I could come at night and learn, if you would allow it." Zhao tossed the blowpipe aside and straightened. "That is impossible. Do you think I work without ceasing, like some god? I am an old man. I rest my weary bones at night." "But, master, son of my old friend, it is clear that I can do nothing for you at present. You must reshape your life into some other form. When you have done this, come to me again, and I will teach you." After a long and difficult moment, Ranofer managed to answer in a very low voice, "Thank you, master. I understand. I will try very hard." The old man nodded, not unkindly, and started toward one of the far stalls, carrying the collar. Ranofer walked slowly to the gate. There he found Haket, whom he had completely forgotten, waiting with the stake behind him on the ground. Haket's enormous eyes and attitude of respect indicated that he had heard everything Zhao had said. In silence, the two boys lifted the heavy stake and carried it between them out into the deserted street, in which the rosy light was graying into dusk. There was no need to speak, for each knew the other's thoughts. They said nothing until they had reached the street of the goldsmiths and were approaching the apprentices' quarters, with Rek's shop in sight at the end of the street. Then Ranofer stopped, his eyes on the familiar gate. "You are to take the stake to the gold house?" he asked. "Aye. Rek will be there?" "Aye," he said. "He would wait until I came." Haket paused, then added, "I can carry it the rest of the way, Ranofer. You need not come." Ranofer glanced at him gratefully and nodded, relieved that he would not have to explain. He had not seen Rek or set foot in the shop since the day he had left it so abruptly months before. The same day Ibni had left abruptly too. Common sense told him that Rek knew nothing of his connection with the affair, but he felt so certain that the odor of thievery must hang about his name at the gold house, that he had no desire to test the point. If Rek were to look at him with disdain and disappointment, he knew he would shrivel with the shame. And if Rek were unchanged, kind, and concerned with his welfare as always, that would be worse. Today of all days, that would be far worse. Ranofer felt that if anyone were kind to him right now, he would fly into a million pieces. Haket heaved the stake to his shoulder. "You will come to the papyrus marsh tomorrow at midday?" "Aye, I'll come." With no further talk, the boys parted, Haket to trudge up the dusky street toward the gold house, Ranofer to start the long walk home. It was not until he reached the ferry docks, now rising high and queer-looking above the shrunken river, with the ferries moored far out in a basin of mud, that he began to realize, first, how tired he was, second, how late it had grown, while he stood talking to Zhao. If Gaboo were home, waiting for him, growing more and more angry at having to wait, Ranofer's steps quickened in spite of his tired and aching body. I can rest later, he thought. The sooner I get home and hand over my coppers, the sooner. He stopped short. He did not have his coppers. He had dashed out of the stone-cutting shop this evening, thinking of nothing but Zhao, so afraid that Pai would detain him for some trivial task that he did not even wait for the daily ritual of wage-paying. He did not even think of it until this moment. "How could I have forgotten?" he thought, standing aghast in the middle of the darkening street. Still, why should he have remembered? He felt no interest at all in his wages, since all he did was carry them home to Gaboo. If I could have them once, he thought bitterly. Never mind, he could not have them. Things were as they were, and right now they were very bad indeed. He could not stand here forever while night came on, yet he could scarcely conceive of going home to face Gaboo empty-handed. "What will I tell him?" Ranofer thought desperately, even while his feet took him hurrying homeward again. "I cannot tell him I forgot. He will not believe it, and then he will beat me for lying. If he does believe it, he will beat me anyway from fury. Aye, he will want to know where I have been so long, and what I have been doing, and why I have been doing it. I cannot think of answers to all those questions. I will have to tell him nothing, or the truth." When he reached the street of the Crooked Dog, he had not yet decided between these alternatives. Either was unthinkable. He stopped, trying to decide it. In a sort of exhausted calm, trotted the rest of the way down the gloom-filled street and into the familiar barren courtyard. It was empty. Maybe there will be a miracle, Ranofer thought as he leaned panting against the gate. Maybe Gaboo did not wait this once. Maybe he forgot the coppers too, and went out somewhere, and will stay a long, long time until tomorrow, and will never know that I did not have them, or ask me questions, or find out that I went to Zow's. The hinge of the door at the top of the stairs creaked loudly, and the door banged back against the wall, and Gaboo came violently down the stairs. There was to be no miracle that night.